Welcome to CSE 121 W1 for spring 23 semester, and we're going to go over some string and variable output and go over a couple methods for doing that. This will be more of a lesson than actually an exercise, but you could work through it as an exercise. This will be a short one. This will be exercise 2. So I'm going to go into Replit. This is my folder where I have my CSE 121 stuff in here, and what I'm going to do is open my previous one, my one Replit. And remember, we also had 1B exercise that was really this one, but we added the shell to it. So I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to copy it using something called fork. And that's a way to kind of make different versions of things, but we're just going to duplicate it. So I'm going to open up my first exercise that has the shell in it. Hopefully you did that already. And then I'm going to go here to my drop-down where my repel name is. And if you look for fork, they used to have a big button for fork in here, but it's hard to find. You have to go to the 3 dots and go here and choose fork. And I'm going to rename this as 2 because we had 1B. And then what I'll do is I'll call it string-var output. And what I'd like you to do is start putting your initials after your repel, because then if I fork them, they're easier to find. I don't have like 22 of them with just string var output. If you have initials, that way if I fork student repels, I have different versions. It's easier to find them. So if you can just put an initial in there, that helps a little bit. And that's all you need to do. And I'll hit fork repel. And it'll be the same thing coming up as a new repel. And your previous one that you have here, I'm just going to get rid of last name through user variables. We're only going to use first name and age. And even after doing that, what I'll show you here is you could reassign a variable. Now I could just call this name, but I could reassign this and just call it name. That's the new variable, is being assigned to the value of first name. That's just a way of reassigning. So I'll just put that in there. Now we have some red wavy lines down here indicating errors because these variables are undefined. I got rid of them and can't even find them. Even before you do anything, it can't find them. So that's undefined. It's showing undefined. It doesn't know where they are. So that's okay. We're going to get rid of this. So I'm just going to get rid of everything from here down. I'll leave my comment. And remember, we're going to do a couple different output methods. Now we're going to use the print function, but we're going to show different ways to combine strings and variables. So what I'll put here, the first one, I'm just going to use the comma method, which we've done before. We did that the first time. That's how we outputted our first Replit that we worked on. And we'll just put a print function. And then inside here, we're just going to put name and age. And we're just going to put like name is age. So it'll say Rich is 55. So we're just going to output that. So it's going to be 2 variables and the string is. We're going to put the string is in there. So I'm going to put the comma method. I'm going to put name and then a comma and then is. And I have to make it a string. Also, I'll put it in quotes and then a comma. And then I'll put age. And that's it. No wavy lines, so I'll hit run. And that's what we want. Now, one problem we have here, if we want to put a period after it, and we put a comma, and then in quotes, a period, because it is a string, a period, it's going to put a space after that. So that's a little bit of an issue that we have. And if we were going to try to put sentences together and things like that, this would not be a good method to do that. But it's a good method just for outputting data real quick. And I'm going to take the period, well, I'll leave the period there just so you can see it. So that's the comma method. And again, it has no problem that this is an integer and this is a string. It has no problem putting them together. It kind of separates them with the commas. So that's okay. That's the comma method. Next one is an older one, and this is the format method. And I'll put format method. And this deprecates down to Python 2.7, so you might see it in older textbooks like the How to Think Like a Computer Scientist book. If you have ones where they're using 2.7, sometimes they use this method. And again, I'll just put print, and I'll just type it again. You could copy it, but I'll just put print. And what it does is it uses curly braces to hold the variables. So inside here, I'm going to use a curly brace, and it puts a pair right away. And I'm not going to put commas. I'm just going to put is, and then I'll put a curly brace. Now, right away, it may be looking for equality to see if this is true or false, if you actually printed that out. But what we're going to do is we're going to do something to indicate, it wouldn't know what variables to put in there. Let me just run it first of all. It's saying false because it's trying to compare these two. So we don't want that. And we also want to make sure that this whole thing is a string. So the whole thing's going to be a string. Now, obviously, if we print this out now, it's just going to print out exactly what's in there. It's just going to be like curly brace equals curly brace is curly brace, like that. So we don't want that. I could put a period here if I want. But what we do want to do is after the quote, here's the string, after it, I'm going to put dot format. And then in parentheses, another set of parentheses, I'm going to put the two variables, name, comma, age. So it's indicating the variables that are going to go inside there. Name's going to go here, age is going to go there. Let's run it. There it is. And that looks perfect. That's fine. And there's also another method called, I'll copy this again because this will be almost the same thing. There's another method, and I'll just put with index numbers. And what you can do is put in an index number if you need to. I'll put in 0 and I'll put 1. Remember, computer start at 0, so this would be index position 0. This would be index position 1. I could run it, and it shouldn't look any different. It looks the same. And if I wanted to change those and put 1 and 0, I could flip-flop them and run it, and it should say 55 is rich. Now again, this isn't a great example of what you could do with this, but it's a very simple example. So you could switch those around. And also, if you decided, oh, well, what if I do 1 and 2? Well, there's no index number 2, so you're going to get an error. And it'll say index error out of range. You know, and even if you're like confused looking at this, you see it's on line 12, and you can see it says out of range. Well, what do you think that means? Well, there's no index 2. There's 0 and there's 1. There's no index 2, so it's out of range. You'll see that if you're working with lists or anything like that, and there's something that's not in the list. So you got to stay with 0 and 1 here. So I'll just put it back at, I'll put this one at 0 just so you can see that it looks switched around, and that's about it. So that's the third one. That's the format method. And this is the easiest one that I'm going to do next. This is the fstring method. And it's working with a string, so it kind of puts everything in a string just like this one. This one, it's not kind of putting variables in between there. It is, but it's all part of one string. Whereas this one, they're kind of separated, and they're joining together with a comma. Here's one big string, and then there's variables inside there. That's what this does. So let me do this, and this is actually just easier. So I'm going to put print, and I'll put my parentheses, and I'll put a curly brace, and I'll put name. You could put the variable right in the curly brace. I'll put name is, and then I'll put another set of curly braces, and I'll put age. And then you still have to make the whole thing a string, just like you did with the format. You can't just print it out like this, because I think it's still going to try to compare what's going on here. It's saying false, so it's coming out like it's not true. So I'm going to highlight this and put it in quotes, and now it's a string. And again, just like the other one, if I print it out, it's just going to put name is age like that. Literally what's in the string is going to print out name is age. That's not what we want. Now I'm going to put a period here, and something else you could do, instead of using this whole dot format, name, age, everything after the fact, all you do is just put an F here. It's a little shortcut. You just put F, and notice that the variables have now changed color, and they're white. The variables in Python are white, strings are orange, and the functions are yellow. So, you know, you're getting to learn some of the colors here. The comments are in green. So let's try this out. This is the easiest one. This should work fine. It has no problem if this is a integer and this is a string. It has no problem doing that. You don't get any kind of errors like that. So this is the one we're going to use the most, this fstring method, because you could just throw all kinds of things in there, and you don't have to worry about issues with spaces like we did up here with the period, and also with concatenation, which I'm going to show you next. Let's do concatenation. This is the last one. I'll just put concat method. You might have used this with JavaScript in the past or another programming language. And again, I'll just type it again. And this way is kind of like the comma one, except it uses plus signs instead of commas. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put name and then plus, and I'll put is and then plus, and then I'm going to put age. Now for strings, because we're going to be using strings in here, I have to make is a string. So I have to make that a string. And then if I want a period at the end, I have to do plus and then a period as a string. So it's kind of a little more complicated that way with all these plus signs. And let's see what happens. And we get an error. It's a type error. And let's see what it says. It says it can only concatenate string, not int. Because remember, this is an int. If I go up here, remember that's an int. If we check its type, it's an int. And it's trying to add an integer with a string, which you can't do. You can't add a word to a number. You can output them, but you can't add them. So it's trying to add it. And we don't want to do addition when we're putting them together. We just want to put them together. So what you have to do is convert the offending variable, which happens to be age. We just want to convert it. And the way to convert it's real easy. We just do str, and in parentheses, you put the variable inside the parentheses. So we're just running a little string function on there that's going to do a convert and convert age, whatever the number is, into a string. So what it's going to do, it's going to do that. It's going to make it 55 without having it as an integer. So let's do this and let's run it. And that's working. It's putting it together. I'm not getting any errors. The only problem is I need spaces. And you have to go in here into the string and put a space here and put a space here. And now I'll run it. And that's it. So everything's working. These are 5 different methods. Actually, one method that's just using index numbers. So really 4 different methods of putting together or concatenating strings with variables and sometimes integers. This is the one we'll use the most. So we'll be using the fstring method. Again, you just use curly braces and you put your variables in there, and you can just combine it into one big string. And then you just put an F before the quote just to indicate that that's a shortcut to say you're going to use that format method. So it's kind of a shortcut of the old method, which used to have this kind of spelled out. So just make sure you don't put the F in here. That's not going to work if you put it in there. If you put it in there, it's just going to say F name is age. So make sure you put it before and not inside the quote. So I just wanted to go over these. Quick little exercise, lesson kind of thing. You could work along with it. You could keep it as a reference to go back to. And when you turn it in, all you have to do is just copy your URL up here, go to the add comment for the exercise 2, and insert it as a link. Even if you put completed, it's fine, but if you want to copy the link and put it in there, that's not bad to do either. Then I could find it faster. This shouldn't take long, so you shouldn't be in a hurry to do that. So anyway, that's our exercise 2, string var output. I had an older video that was with Python Anywhere, but I wanted to do it in our Replit that we're working in. So we're going to move on and do some input functions so that we can actually input data and actually use data from a user instead of just putting in data and just outputting it, which is pretty boring. So we're going to be doing that next in our next exercise.